Welcome to the DMF. I am your host, Justin Yance, and today is part two of my interview with Adam Franklin. He is the president and the creative director at Creative Chops Studios, and he has also done motion graphics for the films on trailers such as Iron Man 2. Enjoy. So,
Um,
yeah, so doing my research, I found that you worked on Why Did I Get Married, the trailer 2, I think it was. Was that your first trailer
mm,
with your stuff in it?
what a question. What a great question. I don't remember, sadly. So one thing, and this was one reason that I actually got excited about moving into uh, trailers and television spots and things like that versus working on actual feature film. Because with my skill set coming out of college, I could have tried to go after the Pixar and the Blue Sky Studios in these places that were putting out the actual feature films.
Hmm.
But the more that I talked to people who actually did it, I realized, do I really want to sit in my cubicle for 6 months on one shot? And I'm only doing the animation of one shot or whatever it is, right? Because these
Yeah.
talented artists are very, very, very good, but they also are focused on the nuance. And it takes so long to do it that
Yeah.
to me, that sounded like it would be absolutely horrible. So
Yeah.
I feel like I actually fell into something great for me, which was in TVs and trailers. You're not finishing all of these, right? But you are presenting as a vendor to these to the studios. And as you are doing all of this, you could be working on a comedy, you could be working on a horror film, you could be working on an indie film, a blockbuster, all this stuff, and it's all going on at one time. So within 6 months, I might work on 5 to 10 different movies. And to me, that was so wonderful because every single time I'd walk into the office, all the other problems aside, every time I walk into the office, it was always something new and exciting and another problem to solve and another way that I could expand my talents and my, creativity and things like that. So to answer your question on why did I get married, uh, that was definitely a finish for me, but I cannot remember if it was the first one. We when
Okay.
I first got there, they pretty much had me as a glorified secretary, which actually was not a horrible thing. And
Yeah.
what they came up with, they said, look, you need to do all the PA stuff. You need to answer the doors, all these kinds of things. And
Mhm.
you have to do these things to kind of earn your stripes. But if you have extra time, if we have uh, graphics that come in, then you can go ahead and work on them and we'll see what's going on there. And so what I ended up doing was staying late. There's a lot of that in this, a lot of staying late, a lot of extra hours. And then a lot of my graphics started finishing and started going to finish for television spots and things like that. And to the point where it actually moved me out of that role pretty quickly after about 6 months into being full-time motion graphics for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it was really fun actually, the more I think back on it with being I would call it a PA at the time because answering the door and random people would show up that, a little starstruck about and things like that. But then
Yeah.
also being able to run posters because back then there's no digital where we're sending files digitally. And so I would grab a big beta tape and, we would record the spots and I would run that over to Paramount. And so I would be able to go in and out of these lots and getting to see Paramount and Warner Brothers and running up and down Santa Monica Boulevard. And, at the time it was very stressful, but it taught me so much about the city I was living in. It helped me fall in love with Los Angeles, but also helped me learn about the studios, the way the studios worked, and just learning a whole lot of things I wouldn't have if I'd just been in a cubicle doing motion graphics. So that was beneficial there.
Talk a little bit about the turnaround. I imagine that has changed a
Mhm.
lot since then. What was it like then? Like when you would work on something, like how long would it take
It's a good question. Everything
compared to
would
now?
right, right. Everything in that industry has to be done yesterday is kind of the feel with everything that you're doing. And so we so turnaround wise, it really would be project dependent, but on the average, on the normal, we would probably, let's say we got a project in on a Monday and we were getting the dailies from a movie that was being filmed. The editors would take the dailies and start cutting together. They would make an assembly of different clips and different areas that we think would be highlighted for the trailer, things like that. And then I would start doing research on past movies in the same genre to get a good idea of what's going to look have the same fit and feel as that, but
Mm.
also to make sure that I'm not fully copying something that's already been done so that we could put a new spin on it, that kind of thing. And then we would usually present 3 to 5 different looks, usually animated within 3 days, something like that.
Wow.
And then depending on how it would come back with notes, they would start marching different areas in different ways. And then we narrow it down, and hopefully get the finish on it. So one of those projects can take, the initial push usually is within about a week to get everything out, including cuts. And unless it's a theatrical trailer, that does take longer. And then
Mm.
the finish could be a month later, 3 months later, depending on how many rounds it goes and depending on all the audience testing and things like that. But I would say the way it's changed now is everything is so much more expedited when it comes to delivery, and there's no cost involved, or very minimal cost involved in comparison to getting a messenger to deliver across Los Angeles, this tape package or this film poster, whatever it is. And so I think there's even an added urgency on top of it now, because everybody, one of the big things that people do instead of waiting for notes, a lot of the execs from marketing at different studios will actually fiber in and watch and edit live. And so they can give notes on the fly live instead of writing down all these notes that have to be interpreted by a producer, brought in, that kind of thing. So I think the speed, just like with anything, technology has taken a lot of the barriers away and brought the cost down a lot. So I would say the speed now is probably even that much faster than it was at that time when it comes to what the studio is expecting.
Do you like having somebody that is watching it as you're doing the cut, or do you find that stressful?
Very stressful. Very stressful.
Yeah.
I think the one place that I like it more is when I'm more in the managerial
Mm.
frame of mind that I am now versus back then.
Yeah.
Because now we don't have this, we don't have a lack of communication or a mix up in communication. A lot of times that would happen when you have a producer who is saying one thing and they've
Yeah.
interpreted it completely differently than what the person wanted. And then you give all these creative people these small sets and ideas of which way they can go, and they go with it. And then it comes back and it's not anything close to what they wanted. So
Like, what are you talking about? This is not what we agreed on. But wait,
exactly.
no, this is what you said.
Exactly. So I think a lot of the miscommunications have been taken out of the fold, but I'm very, very glad I never had to edit or do motion graphics with somebody over my shoulder fibering in that was the actual end person.
Yeah, that would, to me, that just sounds horrible. It'd be like, yeah, be like, no, don't do that. Do that. Don't
That's
do
right.
that.
A lot of
They're like,
performance anxiety there.
they're just like, talk about some of the trailers that you've worked on, some theatrical trailers.
Sure. So let's see some of the trailers, and then I'll roll TV spots into here as well. And
Okay.
just for a little understanding with your audience, to help understand this, trailer is built first, and then they usually do cut downs of the trailer for television spots. And by television now, that means social, that means everywhere, that kind of thing. And then from that, then you can get a lot more creative with the trailers, because then you're basing it on specific marketing guidelines, specific demographics that you're trying to hit. So a trailer is going to play for the general audience, and you do have marketing guidelines there. But TV spots, you might have one that you're cutting for a football crowd versus somebody watching Lifetime or whatever it is to push.
Interesting. So that's something. So when you would do a TV spot for like a film, you would have in mind that this TV spot is for this specific demographic or this audience.
Yes, very much so.
That's,
So yeah,
that's cool.
so the marketing department at the studios would come up with, we need a 30-second spot and it's going to play during NFL football for these weeks. And so
Yeah.
then they would give us all the demographics of age and gender and all that kind of stuff. And that's what we had to kind of drive it towards and know that it was kind of coming out. And then a lot of times we wouldn't know where it's going to show, so we wouldn't know football, but it is for males 28 to 35 and
Okay.
that kind of thing. So but yeah, that stuff, if you don't know who you are marketing things for, if you don't know who your audience is and who you're trying to push it towards, you are just burning money and throwing it
Yeah.
just out into the universe and hoping it hits the right spots. And it's gotten even worse now because
Yeah.
so many eyeballs are pulled so many different ways now that you have to be so strategic in marketing when it comes to any video.
Well, look at what they've done now. They have the a teaser for a teaser for a trailer.
Yeah.
Like there's a 5 second trailer, part of a trailer that's going to release the actual trailer, the full trailer, like on Thursday. So they'll give
Right.
you Tuesday, and then Thursday they'll release the whole thing. So it's like a trailer on top of a trailer. It's
Oh man, it is. It's become a bit ridiculous when it comes to we as a
yeah.
society, when it comes to our attention levels.
Did films have like, because now they have the teaser trailer, then they have the first trailer, and then they have the second trailer.
Right.
Was that still being done at that point in time? Was it always
Yes.
looked on?
So all films would have a trailer to market behind, right? But I would
Yeah.
say those with a little bit bigger budget would end up having the teaser. And a lot of times the teaser was to kind of like wet the whistle 6 to 12 months out before they had actually gotten all the footage shot, that kind of thing. So I think that's a little bit more of when the teaser would play. And then I think I was reading, I don't know, somewhere random thoughts here. The first television spots came for Jaws. That was the first one that did a.
Really?
So from what I was reading, there were maybe like one or two television commercials for movies before then, but Jaws was the first television campaign where they actually brought out. Don't quote me on it. I'd have to cite my sources, but I
I mean
remember seeing that.
that makes sense because I mean a lot of people look at point to Jaws and call that the beginning of the blockbuster, the summer blockbuster movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like that did so well that that's kind of like, oh, let's do it every time.
Right, right.
Except for this year where we have only two movies
I
coming
know,
out
right?
next year. It'll be like
Yeah,
this year, the summer movies two.
exactly. Oh, we could do an absolute full podcast on the industry as a whole right now versus even 10 or 15 years ago.
I
It's
know.
definitely different.
Yeah. So yeah, so talk about like specifically like what are some trailers that you
Sure.
filmed?
So trailers and things that I did graphics on. So when I bring up these, this is more I was not I was not a editor. I was motion
Mm.
graphics artist. So that means anytime you would see the logos, the titles, the cards that come in between, also visual effects that they hadn't put in that we would just go ahead and put in for the trailer or for the television spots. I would handle a lot of that kind of stuff too. Let's see. So Oh, The Fighter is one that I liked. It
Mm.
was very simple, but that was a fun one to do. That was one that we got all the finishes on. I could go down a list of, I'll just list off a lot of the different ones. And this
Sure.
means television or theatrical because I don't remember which ones we ended up doing.
Yeah.
So let's see, Iron Man 2, Sherlock Holmes, Inglorious Bastards, G.I. Joe, Public Enemies with Johnny Depp. Let's see, The King's Speech, Winter's Bone, The Good
Really? Winter's
Guys.
Bone.
Yep, yep. That early before Jennifer Lawrence really took
Yeah.
off. Yep, it was one of the
I remember
indie.
saying that.
Oh,
I
really?
remember
Oh,
seeing it.
nice. Yeah,
It was like, wow, what is this? This is when you have a film like that, that's like kind of a critical darling. I mean, it did very well on the award circuit. I think that's kind
yes,
of how it built its notoriety. Not necessarily it did go to the Academy Awards and that's it, but I think originally it did well like Sundance and around those small when you have something like that, when they're creating a trailer or you're doing something, talk a little bit about the different tones that you would do. Now this kind of goes back to what you were saying, the demographics.
right.
is is that where like you kind of go, okay, we need to, because you'll see that with a lot of like art house films, they'll put a critic's review and there, so and so said this best
Right,
movie ever,
right.
like you don't see that with an Iron Man 2 trailer. They don't say, uh Ebert's no longer with us, but like, he used to have like the thumbs up thing. I mean, like you didn't
Yeah.
see that in the superhero movies. They just kind of are like, but you would see that in the is that something that they would talk to you about? Like what?
Oh, absolutely. Once we had the scripts ready for the spots, that was almost a given If you were doing an
Mm.
indie movie that had legs, if you were doing any movie that they knew was going to be critically acclaimed and would probably do well at the different festivals or had done well at the festivals, and that's why it got bought and now is getting distributed, you would absolutely get the different quotes, and then the producer would come in, choose which ones. But a lot of times we would build out all the quotes. That way they would have it ready in graphic form. And so then they could just put in what they wanted if they needed to switch some out, that kind of thing. It's funny, we used to do a lot more critic review spots, even for blockbusters. But I think that all kind of, I won't say all fell off, but that
Yeah.
that tone and that idea of how you present marketing for it, I don't think people do anywhere near as much as back then.
No, but it's kind of the end of an era for that. There's so many. Not anybody can be a critic,
Mhm.
and it's with like Rotten Tomatoes and stuff. They really just show the top score. I mean,
Right,
if it does well, if it
right,
doesn't do well, they're not going to show this 3% Rotten Tomatoes. This
exactly.
movie's awful. Come see it.
Yeah,
Like they're not gonna put that in there. But
exactly.
but like we don't have those like you had like what Leonard Maltin,
Mhm.
Ebert, the Entertainment Weekly. Like we don't have those people that really hold that kind of weight. Peter Travers of
Right. Was it a
Rolling
Rolling
Stone.
Stone? Yep.
Yeah, like they don't really have that anymore. It's really just kind of you know, now a lot of people are looking at what the audience says and then what the critic says, because a lot of people have kind of figured out that, a lot of the critics are in on it and they're like,
Right.
I'm not going to base, and now with rising costs of going to see the movies, I mean, now it's like, could be $30, just on
Oh
one
yeah.
seat, because they've kind of, I don't know if you've seen they have the seats now that move or whatever, and it's almost like a Disney World thing
Yeah,
they put on
yeah.
the novelty runs off after after a while. Like, all right, I just kind of want to listen here. I don't
I
want
was
to.
gonna ask, have you ever done those? I've saw those. Like the IMAX
I've
ones that
done.
have like the spray that'll mist you
I
and
If
wind.
there's a movie like that, I think that will benefit. I'll go and see it. But yeah, sometimes you'll see it. It's like this movie really wasn't meant for this. Like, there's nothing to do with it. Like, there's a reason the Carowinds rides are like only 3 minutes or so. Well, one, so
Right.
they can get on there, but like the novelty of it's kind of like, but it's funny. Like, I remember when I saw Black Widow, the seats like falling in the air and the seats are just going nuts. It's
Wow.
like, but it's fun. With your kids, I would be careful because I mean it's kind of rough. I don't know why they haven't done seatbelts, but getting back to my point, I mean, they've
Sure.
raised the stakes of, movies. I mean, soon enough, it's just going to be here. It's like, okay, act out the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Virtual reality, I think, is gonna be the next
Yeah.
wave. Maybe. I don't know. Nobody knows, but
Because you need, like, I mean, how are you going to compete with people that are just going to go, I'll just watch it at home? Why do I want to,
right.
you've got kids, you've got a wife, you're going to drag everybody out there. They're going to
Yep.
want popcorn. You want this. Get him to the seat. I got to go to the bathroom, do this. It's almost like a chore. And I'm like, we're just sitting here.
Yeah.
Then you have to deal with the people who don't understand that, this isn't their living room. You decide, oh, I'll take a phone call in the middle of this movie. And it's like, seriously?
That
Really?
that is probably the most frustrating part. After you've spent that much money to get there and do all
Yeah.
of that, and then it's like, really,
And
really?
you can't do anything. You can't go to the, like, the people. They're just like, well, we'll kick them out of it, and they're not going to do anything. They're not.
No.
It's
It's
like
above
how
their
we
pay
treated
raise. Pay
TSA
grade.
before.
Yep.
I mean, it's like they're not looking for things. I mean, now they are, but it's it's so weird.
Exactly.
Um, you're still there. Am I understanding that you worked with a wrestler or something? There was a wrestler or something interesting. Tell me a little
Yes.
bit about that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, that's a wonderful part of the story because when I was at Verb the first place, I would say that my work conditions were probably less than great. I was tested many, many, many times on, do you really want to do this, Adam? Do you really want this? And a lot of
Wait,
craziness was happening there.
give an example of like just so people understand like what
Okay.
those tests are like.
Okay. So
Yeah.
at one point, this company was amazing for what they did, which we were focused on the marketing and branding, feature film and television for the urban and Latino populations. And so it was a very niche company, and
Mm.
they were well connected, did very well with what they were doing. What they weren't good at was money management or business management. So the best example I can give is that myself and one of my really good buddy freelance editors, we, by the time I could see the writing on the wall that this was the end of this company, on every Friday, there would not be enough money in their bank account to pay our checks and for both of us. And so every Friday at lunch, when the clock would strike for lunch, we would both race, and we have good laughs about it nowadays, but we both would race to their specific bank, knowing which one they actually banked at, physical bank they banked at. And whoever found parking, ran in and got there first, usually our check would clear. And the other person's would usually bounce. And we did that for a number of times. So when
Oh
you're at
man.
that stage and at that point in
Yeah.
early in your career and the place you're working for, you realize that this isn't normal.
Relying on who gets to the bank first to see if
That's right.
there's
To
money
know.
in the thing.
That's right. Because the other guy, if you try it and it bounces, that's like a $30 fee. You know what I mean? So yeah,
Oh,
that's
so would you be like sitting there and be like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go to the bathroom just a second. But like, okay, we got only
yeah,
3 minutes left. I'll go out the back. I'll go out the back door.
yeah,
Go down. Like, wait, quit there. He's trying to get to the bank.
exactly. So that leads to the question about the wrestler. So
Yeah.
under all of these circumstances, and just being very overworked and tired and all these things, what I always did was I kept my focus and realized this is a passion of mine, and this will end eventually, and something will happen eventually. And when I didn't think anybody was watching, I kept pushing and being first one there, last one out, like all the things that we know are the great ways to become successful in anything that you do. Well, little announced to me, there actually was somebody watching, and it was actually a senior editor who was a freelance, or maybe he was full time, doesn't matter. Anyway, senior editor there, and he actually was very quiet, roamed the halls, and didn't talk a whole lot, and he was very to himself. And for a long time, I didn't even know if he even liked me or not. So the just trying to get a gauge on everything, right? Well, come to find out, he was very well connected in the industry with other guys that he'd gone to art school with and things like that. And when this company went under, uh, he made the jump to another company that was much more successful. And at that time, and he actually brought up my name as a person to fill a very important role at this company, as they were bringing up a video and film side of their department. And so the wrestler's name, I'll go wrestler name on this one. So if you guys have ever heard of Ricky Ataki, Ricky
Yeah.
Ataki is a guy that I owe a good amount of my career to. He was short-lived, I think, in the wrestling scene there, but he wrestled some pretty big guys from what I remember. And the funny thing was that I always thought that was a rumor in the halls. Like somebody told me
Yeah.
that in his past life he was a wrestler, and we were all like, yeah, whatever. And then we actually somebody looked it up and was like, dude, you were a wrestler.
Wow.
Yep. And we're really
So
good friends
so
to
was
this
this
day.
like so is this like in the 80s? Was he wrestling like in the
Yeah, I
80s
think he
maybe?
was in like the 80s, early 90s, probably. I would have to go back and look and see the different people he was wrestling.
Interesting.
But yeah, he did that and then got into editing and took off from there. But we've worked at other places together since then. And yeah,
Yeah.
really, really good friend. And we have a good laugh about the days at that first company.
So he gave you that kind of old wrestler cold stare. He doesn't let you know what you're thinking of you. And then he does like me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One
He
of
does
the,
see something in me because he's like, yeah, when you're in the wrestling business, I did a podcast where we talked about professional wrestling. So
oh, nice.
I know tons of stuff about professional wrestling. So you told me that. I'm like, oh, yeah, he probably, is like, yeah, he's not going to let you know anything because they're so used to just keeping everything close to the chest where like
Yeah.
nothing is, because they've been, because back in those days, it's very similar to what you had to do with, at the job, you didn't know if you're going to get paid. You don't know if the check's going to bounce. You don't know
Right.
anything.
Yeah.
It's like they
Yeah.
might just say, yeah, we don't have the money today. The house wasn't good. Oh,
Right.
I guess I won't eat today. So that's okay. That about does it for part two of my interview with Adam Franklin. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to thank him personally. As always, you can find me at Justin Yachts. Please like, share, and subscribe, and consider checking out the YouTube channel. And I will see you next time on the DMF.